cleanliness, or I will be criticized. It is the duty of the disciple to follow these etiquette habits very austerely. I'm putting so much energy into this party in India because I want to train you how to live here. Prabhupada wrote his disciples in the West of his successful tour of Vrindavan. I am currently in Vrindavan with a party of 40 devotees, and we are having daily parikram of the holy places. We shall return to Delhi tomorrow by coach. The officials and residents of Vrindavan have greeted us very nicely, and they are simply astounded to see our SKP chanting with great jubilation through the city streets. The mayor has publicly proclaimed that I have done something wonderful. And practically speaking, they realized that before I went to the Western countries, no one there knew about Vrindavan. Now, hundreds of visitors and hippies from your country come here to see Krishna's place. The Vrindavan devotees have understood that Vrindavan is now world famous due to my preaching work. So they are all very much appreciating their hometown, Swamiji. Delhi, December 1st, 1971. Upon his return to Delhi, Srila Prabhupada, along with the 40 disciples who had accompanied him to Vrindavan, stayed at the Birla Mandir. The host offered Prabhupada a small house reserved for special guests in the back of the formal gardens. Meanwhile, political turmoil continued to trouble the nation's capital as the threat of an all-out war between India and Pakistan increased. Even peaceful Vrindavan had been disturbed, being only 90 miles from Delhi and 34 miles from Agra, with its large military installation. One night, while Srila Prabhupada had been staying at Saraf Bhavan, the local authorities had ordered a blackout. Srila Prabhupada and the devotees had been confined to their quarters. The electricity had gone off, and everyone had covered their windows with blankets so that even the candlelight could not be detected. Nevertheless, despite political agitation and threats of war, Prabhupada had now come to Delhi to preach. On his second day in the city, he visited the American ambassador to India, Kenneth Keating, at the American embassy. Srila Prabhupada explained to Mr. Keating the basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the distinction between the material body and the cell, or soul, living within the body. You have got the striped coat, he told Mr. Keating, but I cannot address you, Mr. Striped Coat. Yet we are actually being addressed like that. We are identifying with this body. And Prabhupada explained the soul's transmigration through the 8,400,000 species. That is very interesting, Mr. Keating commented. I believe in the transmigration of the soul. It is a fact, Prabhupada said, just like this child is transmigrating from one body to another. He indicated Saraswati. In the same way, when I give up this body, I will transmigrate into another body. This is a science. I see the American boys and girls, although coming from very rich and respectable families, are turning to hippies. In spite of your arrangement for very big universities, they are becoming frustrated. They are no longer satisfied to live in material opulence. So the present position of human society is dangerous because everyone is feeling dissatisfied and confused. Do you have many Indian followers as well as foreigners? Mr. Keating inquired. Yes, so far as Indians are concerned, everyone accepts Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, Mr. Keating added, I am very impressed with the sincerity of these young American men. Everyone, said Prabhupada, as soon as he understands the signs of Krishna consciousness, will accept it immediately. When Swami Rajananda ji was here, said Mr. Keating, I asked him his definition of God, and he thought a minute and said, well, I would say God is the thread which links one good person to another. I thought that was a very interesting definition. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada said, just like you have a pearl necklace and it is strung on a thread. So all the pearls are resting on that thread. Everyone is resting in God, not that only good men should be resting on that thread. The definition given by Vedanta Sutra is perfect. Janmadi asya yataha. God is the origin or source of everything. What do you say? I am very impressed, Mr. Keating replied. Another definition of God, Prabhupada continued, is that he is all attractive. Everyone has the attractive features of opulence, strength, fame, beauty, renunciation, and wisdom to some extent. You are an ambassador, a representative of your country. So you're attractive. Sometimes somebody comes to me, let me see the Swamiji. So this attractiveness everyone possesses. But God means he who has got all attractiveness in full. After some time, Ambassador Keating apologized and excused himself for an appointment he had to keep. I'm an ambassador and I have to move from the sublime to the mundane. I appreciate very much your coming. Srila Prabhupada, now I'm also coming to the mundane point of view. Next time I come back to the USA, I wish to see the president. I can write a letter, Mr. Keating offered. I will be glad to help you. Prabhupada smiled. You are busy helping the whole world so that peace may come and people may be happy. But instead of being happy, the people of your country are becoming hippies. There is some defect. And here is a chance to rectify that defect, Krishna consciousness. So let us do something tangible, scientific, so that people will become happy. That evening, Prabhupada wrote one of his disciples about the meeting. You may be pleased to know that this morning I met here in Delhi with your American ambassador to India, Mr. Kenneth Keating. He has got very good respect for our movement. And he has promised to help me to arrange a meeting with your president when I shall return to your country, perhaps in the late spring. I have requested him to help this movement, and that help will save your country from great danger by turning hippies into happies. Let us see what can be done. The next day, while Prabhupada was on his morning walk in the streets of Delhi, he asked a devotee to get a paper from a newsboy passing on a bicycle. Prabhupada read the headlines. Emergency declared. 3 enemy planes drowned. Enemy planes down. He had a devotee read aloud. Pakistan launched a massive attack on the Western Front, bombing 7 Indian airfields and crossing the ceasefire line in strength. In Poonch, the Prime Minister, in her broadcast late tonight, described it as a full-scale war launched by Pakistan against India. Earlier, the president had declared national emergency. The national emergency had international implications, with America cutting off supplies to India and supporting Pakistan, China threatening India, and Russia supporting India. This war will not last long, Srila Prabhupada said immediately. It will soon be finished, and Pakistan will lose. Later that night, he heard Indira Gandhi's broadcast over the radio. I speak to you at this moment of great peril to our country and its people. And our people. Today, a war in Bangladesh has become a war on India. This imposes on me, my government, and the people of India's and the people of India a great responsibility. We have no other option but to put our country on a war footing. Prabhupada was not alarmed. War was not the only ugly reality. War was not the only ugly reality. Birth, death, old age, disease, and so many other material sufferings were inevitable, war or no war. Prabhupada continued to follow the news, however, and some days Shyam Sundar would purchase for him 3 or 4 different newspapers. After a few days at the Birla Mandir, Prabhupada and his party moved to a dharamshala in the Kamla Nagar district of Old Delhi. There, Prabhupada delivered what the devotees later referred to as the blackout lectures, while blackout painted newspapers and blankets covered the windows and combat jets flew overhead. Prabhupada would speak by candlelight to his disciples. The propensity to fight is very strong in this age of Kali, he said, and the population is becoming so sinful that they are trying to accumulate atomic weaponry for ultimate destruction of humanity. Sometimes Prabhupada would ask a disciple to speak to the group also. No guests were present, since during blackouts, no one could walk the streets. And on some nights, the police pounded on the door, demanding the devotees extinguish even their candles. Due to the war in India, Prabhupada wrote in a letter, our programs here have been reduced, and there is every night a blackout. Not only in Delhi, but in other parts of India, his disciples were encountering difficulties in their preaching attempts. In Mayapur, the government had ordered the devotees to leave the area because of its close proximity to Bangladesh. As Prabhupada had predicted, however, the war did not last long. On December 17, Prabhupada read the headlines of the Indian Express. Niazi surrenders. Bangladesh is free. India decides on unilateral ceasefire in West. Prabhupada was joyous. He told the devotees confidentially that the reason the war had ended so quickly was because of their massive Sankirtan Yajna at the Pandal a month earlier. On the very same page that had announced India's victory, however, another headline read, PM blames USA for war. Indira Gandhi was blaming President Nixon for the war. The American devotees tensed as they walked the street, sensing the Indians' mistrust, and daily newspaper propaganda only worsened the condition. There is great propaganda now against America in India, Prabhupada wrote, due to the country's stand against India and the war with Pakistan. Delhi was the seat of much political agitation and Delhi was the seat of much political agitation, and Prabhupada decided to relocate the devotees who were there with him. Although his disciples were peaceful and far from being politically active, he sent some to Calcutta, while others accompanied him to Bombay. International politics would not stop the oncoming wave of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement.
Mati, if you're having difficulty to read, I can request someone else. Are you finding difficult to read?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, I'm having a little bit of a cold, so my
sure.
nose is getting blocked as I read. Sorry, Prabhu.
Sure. No worries. I mean, I just noticed it for quite some time now that you're having difficulty. Okay. So, one thing, if you notice here, is that Prabhupada is not disturbed what's happening with this whole thing. He knows that this is Kali Yuga, and in Kali Yuga, as Prabhupada says, the propensity to fight is very strong in this age of Kali. So Prabhupada is unfazed in the phase of this war which is started, and life goes on as normal for devotees. So we've come to the end of this chapter. Any thoughts, questions, reflections? Oh, one important thing I forgot to mention is that Prabhupada credits the Sankirtan which was done in the Pandal a month earlier in Delhi with the stoppage of war. Sometimes we may think, can Sankirtana actually solve all these problems? Actually, it can. We don't do Sankirtan to solve the problems of war and other things. We perform Sankirtan to please the holy name, to please the Lord. But the Sankirtan is so powerful that it can destroy all the inauspicious elements. So, including war. Sometimes people say that, oh, Prabhupada made a mistake. He said there will be a third world war. It didn't happen, and all that, But the pure devotee never makes any mistake. If we read the entirety of Prabhupada's teachings, here, for example, we see how the Sankirtan brought the war to brought an early closure to the war. Similarly, Sankirtan can also prevent a war. So, whenever we see something which Prabhupada predicted did not happen, it means that we did enough Sankirtan, due to which it did not happen. Some inauspicious things, whatever that might be. Okay, if there are no thoughts or reflections or questions or comments, so then we can go on to the next chapter. No one listens to a poor man. Any volunteers, brief?
Prabhu, I can read, Prabhu.
Yeah, we can hear you well. Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, because really I was traveling. I just reached home back now, so I can read now.
Sure, no worries.
Yes, Hare Krishna. No one listens to a poor man. From 1965 until 1970, Srila Prabhupada had concentrated mainly on re-establishing Krishna consciousness in America. His plan had been that if the Americans turned to Krishna consciousness, the rest of the world would follow. Although his preaching to the English-speaking people had begun in India, so, excuse me, some 60 years of single-handed endeavor there had convinced him that Indians were either too absorbed in politics, too ignorant of their spiritual heritage, or too crippled by poverty to seriously accept Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he had not been successful. But in the United States, success had come. Clearly, America was the prime field for implanting Krishna consciousness. Yet, Prabhupada found the West uncultured and uncivilized. If a trace of civilization remained anywhere, he would often say it was in India, the heart of the original Vedic culture. By 1970, he had demonstrated through his extensive traveling and preaching that he intended to establish the Krishna consciousness movement not only in the US but all over the world, especially in India. Even accepting that preaching in the United States and preaching in India were equally important. Still, the preaching in the United States was going well without Prabhupada's constant direct management. What he had begun, his American disciples could continue. But in India, Prabhupada could not allow his disciples to manage ISKCON. He saw how often and how easily the Indians were able to cheat his disciples. Half of ISKCON's work in India was being spoiled, he said, due to his disciples being cheated. If they put on a pandal program, they might end up paying several times the standard cost. The only way for ISKCON to develop in India would be under Prabhupada's direct management. Beginning in 1970, with a small band of American disciples, Prabhupada had traveled from place to place in India as a model sannyasi, opening a great new field for ISKCON. Now, he wanted to construct big temples in India, three in particular, one in Vrindavana, one in Mayapur, and one in Bombay. As early as 1967, he had attempted to make an American house for his disciples in Vrindavana. Mayapur, being the birthplace of Lord Caitanya, was especially important, and Bombay was India's major city, the gateway of India. As with most of Prabhupada's big plans, even his closest disciples couldn't fully comprehend the scope of his vision. But Prabhupada knew what he wanted, and he knew it all depended on Krishna. Gradually, he began to unfold his plans. Temple construction, he said, was secondary to book publication and distribution. But Krishna consciousness must run on two parallel lines. just as a train runs on two rails. One rail was Bhagavata Marga, the other Pancharatriki Vidhi. Bhagavata Marga referred to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting about Krishna, and disseminating the message of Krishna. The second rail, Pancharatriki Vidhi, referred to the rules and regulations for worshipping the deity in the temple. Of the two, Bhagavata Marga was the more important. Although great liberated souls like Hridas Thakur could remain in perfect Krishna consciousness simply by chanting Hare Krishna constantly, Prabhupada knew that his disciples, with their restless natures and past sinful habits, needed the special purification of worshipping the Lord in the temple. Therefore, one of his reasons for wanting to establish temples in India was to purify his disciples by giving them elaborate deity worship. Temples, however, were also for preaching. No one listens to a poor man, Prabhupada would say, and he therefore wanted to construct palatial buildings to attract the masses to Krishna consciousness. Especially, he wanted this in India, where the tradition of temple worship still existed. Building temples and worshipping the deity was secondary to publishing and distributing books, but it was not to be neglected. Prabhupada prepared to give temple construction in Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Bombay as much of his attention as necessary. Shall I continue, Prabhu?
Yes,
Bombay.
Madhuri, I'll stop you if I need.
Yes, yes. Bombay, November 1971. For a year, the devotees had been living at the Akashaganga address, two apartments on the seventh floor of a building in the heart of Bombay. But Prabhupada was not satisfied with this. He wanted land in Bombay to build on and to expand. He was determined. Instead of his usual morning walks, he would take long rides in his car to observe various parts of the city. Because many of the ISKCON life members lived in aristocratic Malabar Hill, Prabhupada's disciples thought it a good place for a temple. On several occasions, Prabhupada rode to the top of Malabar Hill and walked around various properties, considering certain large buildings as possible temples. But for one reason or another, he judged them all unacceptable. Then, in November, Mr. N offered to sell ISKCON 5 acres in Juhu, practically on the shore of the Arabian Sea. As soon as Srila Prabhupada approached the land, he remembered having seen and considered it years before. In August of 1965, during the weeks just before he had left for America, he had been staying at Scindia Colony. In the evenings, he had gone to the home of Scindia Steamship Company owner Mrs. Sumati Morarji in Juhu, where he had read and explained Srimad Bhagavatam for her and her guests. Several times he had passed this very property and had thought that what a good location it would be for an ashrama and a Radha Krishna temple. Although his attention had been absorbed in the task of leaving India, he had still considered the Juhu land. Now he was again in Juhu, reconsidering the same land he had noticed years before. He took it as a reminder from Krishna. The land was overgrown with tall grasses and bushes, and many coconut palms stood throughout. In the back of the property were several tenement buildings. The land bordered on Juhu Road, the main traffic artery back to Bombay, 18 miles to the south. A broad expanse of beach on the Arabian Sea was a brief walk away. The location was good, peaceful, yet not remote. Several five-star hotels bordered the nearby beach. The developers were beginning work on other hotels and apartment buildings. When Prabhupada walked along the beach, he liked even more the idea of buying the land. Rich men had weekend homes on the beach, and thousands of Bombayites would be out enjoying the beach on Sundays. Daily, hundreds of Juru residents used the long, broad seashore for morning walks before going to work. Almost always people were strolling or gathering there. and yet the beach was clean. The mild waves and open skies were inviting. The locale was ideal not only for hotels but for a Krishna conscious center. Prabhupada wanted the Juhu land, and although his disciples continued to show him houses in Malabar Hill, he didn't change his mind. His disciples wanted whatever he wanted. Yet, they had trouble developing enthusiasm for a property so far from the city and with no available housing or temple facility. Mr. N, the owner of the 5-acre plot, had set a reasonable price and seemed friendly and sincere. Yet risks were involved in such transactions, and in this case, Prabhupada even found reasons for suspicion. Through his lawyer, he learned that Mr. N had previously entered into an agreement to sell the same land to the C company, but had later cancelled the agreement. The C company had then filed a suit against Mr. N for breach of contract. If the Bombay High Court decided in the C company's favor, the land would be awarded to them. When Prabhupada's secretary questioned Mr. N about this entanglement, Mr. N assured him the C company could not win the suit. They, but that in any case, ISKCON could withhold a certain portion of their payment until the litigation with C was settled. Mr. N was a well-known figure in Bombay, formerly the Sheriff of Bombay, an honorary judicial police position. He was now publisher editor of one of the largest daily English newspapers in Bombay. He was wealthy, owning several properties in Juhu and Bombay, and influential, not a man one would want to oppose. To purchase the Juhu land under the present circumstances required boldness. In late December, Prabhupada met with Mr. and Mrs. N at their home in the Theosophical Colony in Juhu. Mr. N's home was on the beach, and thus the visit afforded Prabhupada another opportunity to appreciate the value and beauty of Juhu Beach, with its border of palms leaning toward the sea. The Theosophical Colony was a private neighborhood of attractive homes with luxuriant lawns and flower gardens and many exotic birds. Ashoka trees grew on either side of Mr. N's driveway, and a line of palm trees standing just inside the massive stone wall encircled the property. A gardener opened the gate for Prabhupada and a few disciples with him. Mr. N was a short, stocky man with a receding hairline. His hair was clipped short and his round face was pockmarked. He appeared to be in his 50s. Mrs. N had a fair complexion and unusual for an Indian, wore her hair short. Prabhupada had brought flower garlands and prasadam from the Radha Krishna deities of ISKCON Bombay, and these he offered to Mr. and Mrs. N. Mr. N invited his guests to sit with him and his wife on the front porch, which faced a picturesque garden. Srila Prabhupada openly expressed his appreciation of the Juhu land, but admitted he had very little money. Mr. N, however, seemed inclined to a Prabhupada and said he wanted to sell him the property. Quickly, they reached a verbal agreement. To Mrs. N, however, the agreement seemed too liberal, but when she objected, her husband overruled her. Prabhupada and Mr. N agreed on a down payment of 2 lakh rupees. After making the down payment, ISKCON would immediately receive the conveyance. ISKCON would pay the remaining balance of 14 lakh rupees later in regular installments. Prabhupada negotiated further regarding the down payment, offering to pay 50,000 rupees now and another 50,000 later, at which time ISKCON would be allowed to move onto the land. As soon as they paid the remaining 1 lakh rupees, the down payment would complete and Mr. N would give them the deed. Mr. N agreed. Srila Prabhupada was always one to think carefully over such business transactions. He had said that if a businessman tells you, "Sir, for you I am making no profit," you should know he is lying. Therefore, even in ISKCON's early days in New York City, when the real estate shark surprised had proposed as a well-wisher of the devotees, Prabhupada had been suspicious. The surprise had, in fact, cheated the devotees, despite Prabhupada's warning to them. Now, as then, Prabhupada was suspicious, but he wanted the Juhu land and would take the risk. Prabhupada had taken similar chances. At Jhansi in 1953, he had occupied a building, although he had had little legal standing or financial security. And in his first storefront in New York, as well as in his largest building to date, the Wetseka Avenue Church in Los Angeles, he had moved in without assurance of the monthly payment. Practically, the entire success of his movement had come by his taking one risk after another for Krishna. When the devotees in Boston had written to Prabhupada that they had rented a big house for $1,000 a month, calculating that they would be able to make the payment by dramatically increasing their back to Godhead sale, Prabhupada had approved and had even commended their example to others. So, if some risks were involved in Bombay, that was only natural. Once committed to the land, Prabhupada began to unfold his vision for a grand project in Bombay. On December 22, he wrote to Yamuna, "Here in Bombay, we have got good prospects to purchase a very large land in Juhu for very cheap price, just in the middle of a rich neighborhood. We shall build our camp there and begin constructing a temple immediately. And later on, we shall develop a large hotel and school. There is also a chance of getting a nice bungalow in Bombay city also. So in general, we shall make our headquarters in Bombay and also build up Vrindavan and Mayapur." While devotees around the world delighted to hear Prabhupada's plan for a Bombay center, devotees in Bombay had mixed feelings. To envision a temple rising from what was little more than a jungle tract was not easy. Nor was it easy to envision the five-star ISKCON hotel Prabhupada spoke of. The tenement buildings in the rear of the land were fully occupied, and according to Indian law, the tenants could not be removed. If the devotees moved onto the land, they would have to erect temporary housing, maybe even a temporary temple, and the land was mosquito ridden and teeming with rats. Juhu was a small, almost isolated neighborhood without wealthy ISKCON supporters. Although Prabhupada and land speculators predicted that Juhu would grow, at present it was only a village of about 2,000. To reside at Juhu would be a drastic contrast to the comfortable Akashganga building in downtown Bombay. Samala Krishna explained to Prabhupada, "We are Westerners. We cannot live like this. We need doorknobs and running water. Don't you want to become purified?" Prabhupada replied. When the Bombay devotees learned of Srila Prabhupada's response to Samala Krishna, the words, "Don't you want to become purified?" went deep into their hearts. They knew that Prabhupada was asking them to become more austere and that it was for their ultimate benefit. They began to regard moving to Juhu as a formidable spiritual challenge rather than a drudgery. Developing the Juhu property was important to their spiritual master, and it was something greater than more wonderful than they at present realized. Prabhupada knew he was asking his disciples to make a great sacrifice, but he could not avoid it. To preach Krishna consciousness, a devotee had to be prepared to tolerate many difficulties, and whatever difficulties he was asking his disciples to undertake, he was prepared to undertake to a much greater degree himself. On the one hand, he didn't think that living on the undeveloped Juhu property would be too difficult for his disciples, provided they maintained cleanliness and chanted Hare Krishna. Yet, he knew that because they were Westerners, they would find it hard. A preacher, nevertheless, had to make sacrifices, not artificially or arbitrarily, but to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. Sometimes serving Krishna was pleasurable, sometimes difficult. In either case, a devotee had but to do the needful, acting as a menial servant of the spiritual master. Prabhupada counseled his Bombay disciples, impressing on them his vision for this ISKCON Bombay. Although all of them were ready to follow his decision, some of them had been feeling doubtful and weak-hearted. Seeing their spiritual master's commitment to the project, however, they vowed to give up their separatist mentalities. Prabhupada then left for Jaipur for a week's preaching engagement at Radha Govinda Temple. Jaipur, January 12,
Hare Krishna,
19...
Hare Krishna, Mati. Can you please
Yes,
stop it?
yes.
So, um, this whole thing, the Bombay story is very transcendental. It is the inconceivable plan of the Lord, because Krishna had shown that land to Prabhupada even before he left India to go to the West. And now that very same piece of land had come back to him. Of course, Prabhupada had thought that it would be a good place for a temple even before he went abroad, before he went out of India. And Krishna remembered it, and Krishna offered him that same piece of land. Now, all the different intrigues there, Mr. N, all of it has been captured in great detail by Giriraj Maharaj in his book, I'll Build You a Temple. A very big book. I mean, not very big, but it's a big book, and with fascinating detail about every single aspect of the Juhu temple. In fact, I liked that book so much that perhaps after the Prabhupada Lilamrita, we finished through the Prabhupada Lilamrita, I think it would be good if we could take up that book, I'll Build You a Temple. It's really amazing. Okay. One thing that I wanted to mention here is how Prabhupada tells Tamal Krishna Maharaj, don't you want to get purified? So this is the nature of engagement when we are dealing with a pure devotee. There is no question of doing anything less than what a pure devotee wants us to do, because that is in our highest interest. As we have discussed several times, we have been in this material world practically since eternity. Practically means, of course, we came from the spiritual world, but we've been here so long, many lifetimes of Brahma. I mean, practically you cannot trace how long we've been here. And finally, when we get an opportunity, not just an opportunity to progress in spiritual life, but an opportunity to go back to the highest planet in the spiritual world. Or let's say, for those of us who have a Swarupa in Goloka Vrindavan can go there. But whatever it is, to revive one's constitutional position fully, that opportunity is provided by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, every moment of time that we have in this body, while inhabiting this body, is precious. Every moment, what to speak of every moment, even a fraction of a moment, lavamatra, sadhu sangha, it says, right? So, fractions of seconds, everything is very valuable, very, very valuable. And therefore, having such a situation of having been very greatly fortunate to come in touch with a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, and being in his International Society for Krishna Consciousness, there should be no hesitation whatsoever on our part to do the needful to attain love of Godhead in this very life. So Prabhupada's instruction, as Sacharup Maharaj writes, it went very deep into everybody's heart. So as we're reading Prabhupada's Lilamrita, we are not physically present with Srila Prabhupada at Juhu Beach, at the Juhu property. Nevertheless, these instructions are transcendental. So therefore, we should also remember any chance to serve the pure devotee, to follow his instruction, we should do it unhesitatingly. Okay. Any thoughts, reflections, comments before we go on to Jaipur?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, this temple that we have now in Chapati, I thought somebody said that place also at some point Prabhupada had mentioned that we would have a temple here. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't know if Prabhupada said we would have a temple, but there is something directly connected to that place. If someone else can comment on it, I would appreciate it. I don't know if Prabhupada exactly said that we'll have a temple in that same spot, but something like that. Yes. Not just Juhu, but Chopati also. We had that thing, right? I mean, anyway, I don't recollect when I read the Leelamrita something directly in reference to that, but in the book, I'll build you a temple, there is some reference to that. But we still have some, the Bombay story has just begun. So we'll see as we progress whether there would be any reference to Chopati. But if any of you know, please do share. I do know that, yes, Prabhupada did say, but what exactly he said, I don't recollect.
Krishna Prabhu,
Yes,
I have a question. How do we reconcile Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's instructions to Prabhupada that if you get money, print books, don't build, well, no, he didn't say don't build temples, but that if he had the chance, he would dismantle the marble and print books instead, because the palatial building or temples that he was building in India were the source of a kind of a fractious uprising within the movement, compared to Prabhupada's very firm belief that we've got to build palatial temples in order to attract the general masses. So how should we understand that difference in approach between a spiritual master and his disciple in attacking the same preaching movement?
Yeah, actually, you see, first of all, Bhakti Srila, this is, if you actually look at the whole context, it's not very difficult to understand, because what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was, he built a very palatial place, the Bagh Bazaar temple. Because as this chapter says, Prabhupada, as you would say, no one listens to a poor man. So in India, especially, if you have a big opulent temple, people come there. That was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's idea also, to have a palatial temple in Bagh Bazaar, so that people would come. But as they say, some things are like a double-edged sword. So this became like a double-edged sword, where although he built a big temple, but the result was not very good. And Prabhupada, well, all of you know this, that Prabhupada said that my Guru Maharaj left this planet early because he was not very satisfied with his disciples. Whereas Prabhupada said he was satisfied with his disciples, but he said, don't spoil it. So Prabhupada had great hope that the original vision of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would be fulfilled. The original vision was to have a palatial temple so that to attract people to the temple and distribute Krishna conscious spiritual knowledge to them. So that was the original vision of his Guru Maharaj. So Prabhupada is confident that his disciples would be able to fulfill that vision. That's why he did it. It was not a new thing, actually. He dismantled it when it did not work. Like, for example, Prabhupada, when he took his disciples to Radha Kunda, they were sporting in the waters of the Radha Kunda, and Prabhupada said, no more bathing in Radha Kunda. But is that an instruction for all times? No. Can we take bath in Radha Kunda today? Yes. I would generally say that if you follow the first 10 instructions, then the 11th instruction you can follow, take bath in Radha Kunda. But first 10 instructions we don't follow, then there's no meaning in trying to do the 11th one. So yeah, so some things may be temporarily disbanded or suspended, but the original vision still remains if it can be fulfilled.
Thank you, Prabhu.
However, I mean, the point there was that we are doing all this just to attract people to be Krishna conscious. Just like Prabhupada says here, Bhagavata Vidhi and Pancharatrika Vidhi. We just read that a little earlier. They're like two tracks on which a train runs. So the idea is to help people progress. That was the idea due to which Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, they were, the idea of building temples was so that people can come and see the deities and hear Sankirtan, participate in the Sankirtan. Okay, I think we'll go on to Jaipur.
Yes. Jaipur, January 12, 1972. Jaipur is an ancient city in the state of Rajasthan. Occasionally, some of Prabhupada's disciples would go there to purchase marble Radhakrishna deities for ISKCON temples in India and around the world. The devotees in ISKCON centers in Detroit, Toronto, Dallas, as well as throughout Europe wanted to install Radhakrishna deities, and with the Srila Prabhupada's permission, were ordering murtis from Jaipur. On such an errand, two women, Kaushalya and Srimati, had gone to Jaipur in January of 1972 on behalf of the New York City Temple. When a government official had discovered Srimati wasn't carrying her passport, the officials, suspicious of spies due to the war with Pakistan, had insisted the women stay in town until Srimati's passport arrived in the mail. Meanwhile, the girls had daily visited the Govindaji temple and had sometimes held kirtana in the street in front of the temple. They had had daily talks with P.K. Goswami, who was in charge of the temple, as well as Jaipur businessmen and other respectable citizens. Almost everyone in Jaipur regularly visits the beloved deities of Radha Govinda.
Can you stop there, Mataji? Yeah.
Yes.
Say, I don't know how many of you in this group have been to Radha Govinda temple in Jaipur, especially in Mangalarati. It is the only, I mean, I don't know, I've not gone to Rajasthan or Gujarat, but except for this part, Jaipur, considering other places, Jaipur is the only place I have seen where, again, I have not seen Nathdwara, I have not gone to other places, but in Jaipur, among Indian places where I've traveled, Jaipur is the only place where I've seen where local residents, businessmen, shopkeepers, other regular citizens, they flock to Radha Govinda temple to attend Mangalarati, just like ISKCON devotees flock to our temples to attend Mangalarati. Here, common men and women and businessmen and shopkeepers and everybody across, I mean, people from, not everybody, people from across Jaipur come to Radha Govinda for Radha Govinda deities to attend Mangalarati. And these Radha Govinda deities are our Srila Rupa Goswami's deities. I mean, so this is our property. In fact, in terms of, I'm not saying it's not our property technically, officially, but the deities belong to us. The deities belong to Rupa Goswami. So it's our heritage. Please go ahead, Mr.
The citizens of Jaipur had been moved by the devotion of Prabhupada's two disciples. And when one of the men had asked, "What can we do to help your movement?" the girls had replied, "Bring Srila Prabhupada here." Some of Jaipur's prominent citizens had devised a plan to share expenses and responsibilities in arranging a Pandal program, and the two women had sent a letter to Prabhupada in Bombay inviting him to come and preach. He had agreed. At Srila Prabhupada's request, devotees from Delhi and other Indian centers came to Jaipur to join him. Prabhupada took a small room within the Govindaji temple compound, and his disciples moved into a nearby house. Prabhupada liked the location. The only disturbance was the many monkeys, large, charcoal faced monkeys with long curling tails. Climbing through the trees and across the rooftops, they would scamper down unexpectedly to steal whatever they could. The women
These are
cooking for
langurs.
Prabhupada.
Langurs.
Yeah.
This is the kind of monkeys you have in Mayapur also.
The women cooking for Prabhupada were exasperated by the monkeys' bold forays to steal vegetables from the kitchen, even chapatis right off the fire, and they complained to Srila Prabhupada. Neither be their friends nor their enemies, Prabhupada advised. If you make friends with them, they will simply be a nuisance. If you become their enemies, they will become very vindicative. Just maintain a neutral position. The monkeys, however, continued to raid the kitchen. Again, the cooks complained to Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhupada said, if you want to stop the monkeys, then this is what you must do. Purchase one bow and arrow and shoot a monkey on the top of a tree with the arrow. And then when he falls down, take the monkey and hang him upside down by the legs to a branch of the tree. Next to him, you also hang the bow and the arrow. This will teach them. Prabhupada knew that shooting monkeys was illegal in Jaipur, and he did not expect his disciples to actually shoot them, but he delivered the advice with a serious expression. Indirectly, he was advising them not to be so upset over a few monkeys. Prabhupada and his disciples immediately joined in the intense devotional atmosphere of Jaipur. Since the Radha Govinda temple was under the jurisdiction of Jaipur's royal family, to visit the deity daily was practically required for all citizens. Morning and evening, crowds of enthusiastic worshippers would come and go, worshipping the forms of Radha and Krishna on the altar. These were Rupa Goswami's original Radha Govinda deities from Vrindavana. Almost 500 years ago, when a Mughal ruler had attacked the Govindaji temple in Vrindavan, the king of Jaipur had arranged for the deities to come to Jaipur. The worshippers at the Radha Govinda Mandira displayed spontaneous excitement in seeing the deities. They would come forward crying, Jayo, Jayo, Govinda, Govinda. And when the curtains were closing, the people would rush forward to catch a last glimpse of the divine forms. Srila Prabhupada avoided the large crowds before the deity, keeping to his schedule of rising early and translating the Bhagavatam. Speaking with Kaushalya and Srimati, Prabhupada praised them for having arranged the Jaipur Pandal program. You girls are carrying on Lord Chaitanya's movement so nicely, he said. Just see, even without husbands, you go on preaching. He said that the Western women were different from the Indian women who simply stayed at home. Then Prabhupada discovered that his two women disciples had not actually done a thorough job. Although the Pandal program was to begin in 2 days, no one had arranged for the large tent to be erected. Prabhupada said it was not a woman's nature to do such organizational work. The women became morose to hear him. When they showed him the flyer they had printed advertising the festival, Prabhupada became angry. It's not standard, he said. He did not say International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but only A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and his foreign disciples. What is this? Prabhupada shouted. What? Srila Prabhupada Kaushalya asked. Foreign? What do you say foreign? Why do you say foreign? It must be American and European. That is what is attractive, that they are American and European. But you are just a woman. What can I expect? The two women began to cry and left the room. With Shamasundar's help, Kaushalya and Srimati had new corrected flyers printed and returned to tell Srila Prabhupada. But now his mood had changed completely. His anger was gone. He was soft. After all, these disciples had tried their best. In a disarming disclosure, he began to explain that to be a spiritual master was difficult. I chastise you, he said, because it's my duty. Disciple is related to discipline. So it's my duty to my disciples. disciples. Otherwise, I am not upset with anyone. I simply do this to discipline you because you are my disciples. He consoled them, saying they were sincere and lacked expertise because of pure poor upbringing. The devotees present felt Srila Prabhupada was wonderfully expressing to them a bit of what he, as spiritual master, felt in training them. In a great last minute endeavor, the devotees obtained the pandal and erected it in time for Prabhupada to begin his program as advertised. On opening day, the devotees held a parade through the streets with Prabhupada riding in a palanquin, a large embroidered umbrella sheltering his head. Also, in the procession were decorated elephants, brass bands, and devotees, Indian, American, and European performing kirtana. Srila Prabhupada's first program was in the morning after the darshana of Govindaji. So, as to catch the huge morning crowd, people would come hurrying into the temple to see Radha Govindaji and then proceed out into the large Hare Krishna Pandal beside the temple. On the opening morning, Prabhupada performed an Abhisheka ceremony bathing marble deities of Radha and Krishna. He named these deities soon to be shipped to the ISKCON temple in New York, Radha Govinda. After one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples had performed a fire sacrifice, Prabhupada lectured to the crowd in Hindi. The schedule for the remaining days would be morning and evening lecture, kirtana and prasadam distribution. While preaching in Jaipur, Srila Prabhupada was simultaneously reflecting on and through letters to his disciples, acting on matters in many other parts of the world. Although he participated fully, giving 2 lectures a day, and although he constantly met and interacted with guests, friends, and devotees, he was also absorbed in thoughts of other places and concerns. He was conducting his movement on many fronts. Wherever he happened to be at present was his camp, just as a general makes camps in various places while conducting many battles in the overall effort of a war. His preaching in Jaipur, therefore, was only a small fraction of the scope of his worldwide mission. From Jaipur, Prabhupada wrote his disciples in Calcutta, urging them in their development of the Mayapur land. He wanted a grand opening ceremony by Lord Chaitanya's birthday in March. Unfortunately, the government was restricting foreigners from entering Nadia because of its proximity to Bangladesh. Please try very hard to get those permits. Prabhupada urged his men in Calcutta, as we must be all assembled there for Lord Chaitanya's appearance day. Repeatedly, Prabhupada mentioned his concern over the government's restricting his men. I do not think there will be difficulty if we just go there like the ordinary pilgrims and set up our camp there for Kirtan continuously. Anyone will see we are only serious devotees of Lord Chaitanya and not Pakistani spies. Prabhupada wrote ahead to his disciples in Nairobi, driving them onward with his blessings. Continue to work very hard for his pleasure, and all of you will go back to home, back to Godhead. To the San Diego Temple President, Srila Prabhupada wrote, I am very pleased to hear from you that book sales are increasing very fast. I am hearing such good news from all over the society, and this pleases me more than anything. And Prabhupada was often thinking of the land in Bombay. Sometimes he talked about it or mentioned it in a letter to his representatives there. The Bombay land purchase was still not finalized, and Prabhupada was particularly anxious that his disciples pay the money as agreed and move immediately onto the land. Ramana Krishna was Srila Prabhupada's governing body commission secretary for India. Some of the devotees said that actually Prabhupada was the GBC secretary for India, although he allowed his secretaries in other parts of the world to manage mostly on their own and to make their own decisions. In India, he would scrutinize even small matters and make most of the decisions himself. Still, he counted on Tamala Krishna as his trusted assistant in important dealings. He would send Tamala Krishna from one Indian center to another to help the local devotees with governmental, legal, organizational, or preaching problems. In Bombay, just prior to coming to Jaipur, Tamala Krishna had asked Prabhupada's permission to take sannyasa, the renounced order. Srila Prabhupada had awarded sannyasa to only a few men, and he had specified their duties as traveling and preaching. Taking sannyasa, therefore, not only meant giving up wife and family, but also renouncing managerial posts. At the same time, as Prabhupada had set up his governing body commission, he had also initiated several sannyasis, purposefully not appointing any of them, even though they were some of his most able men as GBC secretaries. The Grihasthas were to manage the temples as presidents and GBC secretaries, and the sannyasis were to travel and preach. Srila Prabhupada therefore had to carefully consider whether or not to give Tamala Krishna sannyasa and thus lose his GBC secretary for India. On principle, Srila Prabhupada liked the idea of giving Tamala Krishna sannyasa. If a young man was actually qualified to give up family life and to use his intelligence and energy in preaching Krishna consciousness, then Prabhupada was always ready to encourage it. The world was in dire need of Krishna consciousness, and even hundreds of sannyasis would still not be enough. On these grounds, how could he not appreciate the request of one of his leading disciples to take sannyasa? But first, he would test Tamala Krishna's determination. Tamala Krishna was insistent. Seeing that Prabhupada would not make a commitment, Tamala Krishna had adopted the tactic of presenting himself before Prabhupada early in the morning without saying a word. In Bombay, he had entered Prabhupada's room, led the Mangalarti before the deities, and sat silently before Srila Prabhupada. Knowing the mind of his disciple, Prabhupada could understand that Tamala Krishna was not only determined but obstinate. After several days of tolerating Tamala Krishna's silent insistence present every morning, Prabhupada had finally agreed to consider seriously the request. Prabhupada was also concerned with Madri Devi Dasi, Tamala Krishna's wife. She was an attractive, intelligent girl who had given her life to Krishna consciousness, and Tamala Krishna, by his own choice, had married her only a year ago. Spiritually, Madri was Prabhupada's daughter, and Prabhupada wanted to protect her from undue disturbance. Even as householders, Tamala Krishna and his wife had been renounced, traveling with Prabhupada throughout India, with little time or facility for private life as husband and wife. Tamala Krishna had been in Bombay when Shamasundara had informed him that Prabhupada had mentioned in a letter to Brahmananda Swami in Africa that Tamala Krishna might take sannyasa. Spurred on, he had left his wife in Bombay and joined Prabhupada in Jaipur. On leaving, however, Tamala Krishna had asked Madri for his personal copies of the first three volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam signed by Srila Prabhupada. Madri had become suspicious. She had asked why he wanted them. I just want to read them, Tamala Krishna had answered, but she had suspected the worst. No, you are not coming back, but assuring her that he would definitely be returning, he had left for Jaipur. Once with Srila Prabhupada, Tamala Krishna again resumed his silent insistence. Whenever there would be an open meeting in Prabhupada's room, the GBC leaders would usually sit in a privileged position near Prabhupada, so as to best receive direct instruction. Tamala Krishna, however, would simply sit outside the door. The first time he did this, Prabhupada looked up and said, Tamala Krishna, you are sitting outside? That's very nice. And the other devotees took it that Prabhupada was praising his disciples' humility. when on one occasion Prabhupada addressed Tamalakrishna as Tamalakrishna Maharaja. The devotees were startled. The women devotees in Jaipur, being close friends with Madri, became angry at what they took to be Tamalakrishna's duplicity. Although Prabhupada had not given permission, Kamalakrishna went ahead with his plans, even to the point of preparing his sannyasa danda and dyeing his clothes. The women were outraged. Madri was not even there to represent herself. Altogether, the women went to see Srila Prabhupada, who patiently and sympathetically heard their presentation. Then Prabhupada called for Tamala Krishna and said, "Your wife is my daughter, my disciple, and I have to think for her also. So I do not know how I can do this because she will be in great difficulty." Tamala Krishna argued, but Prabhupada pacified him and asked him to be patient. The sannyasa issue had become a topic of controversy among the devotees in Jaipur. The men were rooting for sannyasa and the women were opposed. Prabhupada, however, remained grave. Throughout the week-long festival, large crowds continued to come for Prabhupada's morning and evening lectures. Prabhupada would chant prayers from Brahma Samhita and then lecture in Hindi. Not only did the citizens of Jaipur honor Prabhupada, but they honored his disciples also. Here, more than in most other Indian cities, the devotees were treated not as foreigners or outsiders, but as sadhus. This whole city is made of devotees of Radha Govindaji, Prabhupada commented. The police chief, who visited often, was cordial and respectful. As Prabhupada and his disciples went from place to place in Jaipur during the day, policemen would salute them, halting traffic to let them pass. People invited Srila Prabhupada to their homes and they treated him like a king. Prabhupada had also asked several women devotees to carefully observe the deity worship in Jaipur. They informed him that they had observed that every night the devotees were dressed in night clothes and that their clothes were also changed at two other times, in the morning and in the afternoon. The women told Prabhupada how a priest offered the deity scented oils on cotton tipped sticks, which the priests would later offer along with flower garlands from the deities to the incoming worshippers in exchange for fresh garlands. These devotional practices were standard, Prabhupada said, and could be introduced throughout ISKCON. Each evening, Prabhupada spoke at the pandal, and often a respectable Jaipur citizen would introduce him. When the Queen of Jaipur introduced him one evening, she expressed her devotional sentiments for Prabhupada and his movement. After lecturing each evening, Prabhupada would stay for a slideshow of ISKCON's activities around the world. One night, during the slideshow, Srila Prabhupada called Tamala Krishna over beside his Vyasasana. "Taking sannyasa will be difficult now," he said softly. "Your wife will suffer too much." He sat back a moment while Tamala Krishna took in what he had said. Then Tamala Krishna leaned forward and said with determination, "One way or another, Srila Prabhupada, she is going to suffer. Either she will suffer now when I take sannyasa, or if I take sannyasa later on, she will be just as unhappy. There will never be a time when she will want me to. So, since the feeling is going to be the same, it might as well come now. Free me. She'll get over it." Prabhupada said no more, but he remained thoughtful. Later that night, after the Pandal program, he called for his sannyasi disciples, Subala, Madhudvisha, Gargamuni, and Devananda, and for his personal secretary, Shamasundara. Gathering them together along with Tamala Krishna, he said, "Tamala Krishna wants to take sannyasa. So what's your opinion? Should he take or not?" Everyone agreed he should. Finally, Prabhupada consented. "You will have to prepare things," he said. "Things are prepared already," Tamala Krishna said. Then Srila said Prabhupada, "Tomorrow morning we must have the ceremonies." The next morning, Prabhupada performed a special ceremony in the pandal, lighting the sacrificial fire and offering Tamalakrishna the sannyasa danda. The women were angry with Tamalakrishna, but it was too late. After the ceremony, Prabhupada called Tamalakrishna Maharaja to his room. You have given up a very good wife and a high position. Therefore, I am giving you the title Goswami. Now you have to be in the same mood as the Goswami, being able to preach all over the world and accept disciples. Suddenly, Prabhupada began to laugh. I have been testing you, he said, to see whether or not you are determined. So, what will you do? I thought I would go with my danda, said Tamala Krishna Goswami, and without anybody else, simply wander from city to city in India and preach about Krishna without any vehicle or anything, just like Lord Chaitanya did. Very good, Prabhupada said. Tamala Krishna Maharaja offered obeisances and walked out. Scarcely an hour later, however, Prabhupada called him back. This is not a very good proposal, he said. If you want to do something, you should have some assistance and facilities at your disposal. Prabhupada then assigned a couple of brahmacharis to go with Tamala Krishna Maharaja for preaching. He also gave his new sannyasi his first assignment. Immediately after Jaipur, Prabhupada was planning to go to a festival in Nairobi, Africa. In Ahmedabad, another program awaited him. You go on my behalf to Ahmedabad, said Prabhupada. At Tamala Krishna Goswami's sannyasa initiation, Srila Prabhupada had given him the sannyasa mantra, a verse that describes the surrendered devotional attitude of the Vaishnava sannyasi. Vaishnava sannyasa emphasizes engaging one's body, mind, and words in ecstatic service to Krishna, as distinguished from the sannyasa of his of the impersonalists who speculate on Brahman or sit alone in silent meditation. The Vaishnava sannyasi, by taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, crosses the ocean of nescience and brings others across with him. As Srila Prabhupada was demonstrating, a Vaishnava sannyasi should travel all over the world, working with all his might to reclaim the fallen souls on behalf of Lord Krishna. Vaishnava sannyasa meant coming to places like Jaipur and preaching. It meant worshipping Govindaji in the temple, and it meant sending Radha Govinda to be worshipped by the devotees in New York City. It meant allowing women an equal opportunity to become pure devotees in Krishna consciousness. And it meant separating a man from his wife for the higher purpose of sannyasa. Srila Prabhupada, although beyond the Varnashrama designations of sannyasa, was nevertheless the best sannyasi and the creator of many other sannyasis, whom he instructed to follow in his footsteps. He said his sannyasis should do even more than he, make more followers, publish more books, and establish more ISKCON centers. Shall I continue, Prabhu?
Okay, Masli, we can stop there for today.
Yes.
Couple of things. There are several women in this class. So, any comments on how Tamal Krishna Maharaj took sannyas? Are you all also angry?
Prabhuji, shall I just tell Prabhuji?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Prabhuji, like my question is not about agree or anything. Like why Prabhupada like gives, because many were Grahastha also, they were doing a very great job, like Gurudas and Yamuna Mataji. So those the first three couples who went to England and all. So why like Prabhupada gave like this sannyasa to many of them like this? I think only Samal Krishna Maharaj he gave like that, Prabhu.
This is the most. This is the incident which is captured in great detail, though. Others, I'm not very familiar what were this particular circumstances. But this has been captured in great detail.
Yeah, I think even Indrajumna Maharaj they had given, I think, Prabhuji. If I am not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there are other grihasthas also who took sannyas.
Yeah, I think Indrajumna Maharaj I know, Prabhuji. I don't know any other. I know Indrajumna Maharaj and Tamal Krishna Maharaj.
Okay, see, I have nothing more to say than the fact that, you see, it says that Shiva, Virinchi, even Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, they cannot understand the mind of Krishna. So Krishna's pure devotees, the Nityasiddhas, they're also above the modes of material nature. They're very intimately related with the Supreme Lord. And it is not possible with even a great amount of intelligence like that of Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva to understand the mind of a pure devotee. So I would simply say that it's not comprehensible for us from the point of view of logic or even trying to. Okay, Prabhupada is the best person to balance all the instruction that he gave. So he's given various instructions. So for Tamal Krishna Maharaj, the perfect balance of his instructions was to give him sannyas. That's all. So of course, then you could say, what about Madri? Then what did his wife? Was it fair? Doesn't she go through the hardship? Prabhupada actually knows, that he's also talking about it, right? She'll go through so much suffering. So this is like our Krishna consciousness movement is like how Prabhupada explains in a conversation with Professor J.F. Stoll. He says that in the Vedic system, what happens is there are two parties. First of all, whenever there's a discussion, the two parties involved have to accept Vedic authority, Vedas as infallible and true. So one party quotes from the Vedic authority, a set of arguments. Another party also quotes from Vedic authority only, a set of counter arguments. Now, both the arguments are from Vedic authority. Therefore, Prabhupada says, if one party just quotes one set of Vedic statements, another authority quotes another set of Vedic statements, you'll never come to a conclusion. Therefore, Prabhupada says, there should be a judge. The judge will hear all the arguments, that the judge will give a verdict. That's exactly what happened here. That you had Tamal Krishna Maharaj presenting his set of arguments, and you had others also presenting. The women went and presented their set of arguments. Prabhupada heard both of them, he considered both of them, he weighed both of them, he tested Tamal Krishna Maharaj also, and finally he gave the verdict that Tamal Krishna Maharaj can take sannyas. So we accept the verdict of Srila Prabhupada. That's the only way. We can't necessarily understand the mind of Prabhupada. Here we see that he was testing. He said that he was testing. He heard both the arguments. We know that he heard both the arguments. And he delivered a verdict. We know the verdict is fine in the sense that a young man can take sannyas. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas when he was 24. There's no restriction on a young man taking sannyas. But to balance all the factors and have the wisdom to do it right, that only Prabhupada can do it. It may be difficult from our point of view of our conditioning or our experience to understand how it is true. But in Krishna consciousness, we accept that the pure devotee knows best what is to be done. Does that pacify you?
I don't know, Prabhuji. I had to contemplate on this because I don't know, it's a little bit higher to my understanding also, Prabhuji. These things are really higher to understand and a higher level to understand. So maybe
These
in
things we
course of
cannot
time,
understand. Actually.
yeah,
we
won't
understand.
that's what we won't understand what's Prabhupada's real.
No, but at least we can see it is not against Shastra though. I mean, it's not acting against Shastra.
Yes.
He's very much weighing all the arguments based on Shastra.
Yes. No, that we have seen, I think, in some this one, I don't know, before I read it, some of them had taken sannyasa very young age, leaving their wife and children. That also I have heard in some stories of Puranas or somewhere I have heard. Maybe in Maharashtrian one, this one, something like Jnan Dev, somebody like that. I don't remember exactly. I think someone like that, he has taken sannyasa like that. Or
we have Lord Chaitanya himself, no?
Yeah, we have Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, like that I have heard also. That's true.
Anyone else has something to share or say something on this?
I want to add one more thing in this, Prabhuji. Now, is it possible like that? Like, if it may not be like as young as like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, maybe within 1 year of the
Okay,
marriage or
now
something?
the GBC have decided, or have their conclusion is they are not like Prabhupada.
Okay.
So first of all, I think they should be above 40 to apply for sannyas, and they should also have the written consent of their wife. The sannyas is very difficult in Islam. It's not easy anymore. I mean, it's not, I mean, not even earlier, it's not easy, but it is not, it is more difficult now than it was in the past. Written consent of a wife, of if they have a wife, the written consent of the wife is mandatory. Apart from, I think the age, I think, is above 40. I'm not sure about the age limit though. There should be at least 40 to apply for sannyas. Then they apply for sannyas, there is waiting period, and they check during the waiting period how you're doing, things like that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I ask a question now? Or
Yes,
sorry,
please.
is my session finished?
Yeah,
Yes,
if
Prabhu, you can ask Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
So, Prabhu, I have a question. In Krishna consciousness, the Bhagavad Dharam is actually supposed to be the focal point.
Yeah.
Why do you think that Prabhupada made so much emphasis on Varnashana Dharma as opposed to Bhagavad Dharma? Because actually the Varnashana Dharma is more for material purposes, and in Bhagavad Dharma it doesn't matter which ashram you're in, you can be
Correct.
equally focused in Krishna consciousness and purify yourself and others around you. So
Correct.
why do you think Srila Prabhupada made such emphasis on Varnashana Dharma and creating
Prabhupada, first of all, yeah, we look at the
Sorry.
historically what happened. Prabhupada initially did not emphasize it. Later on, he says also why he's doing it. He says because our sannyasis are falling down, they're not able to maintain their vows. So he says this, why are they falling down? Vaishnava means one who does not fall down. So the logic, let me give you an analogy. Okay, let's say you're riding on a very bad road. Material life is a bad bargain. It's a rough ride. So when you're riding a rough road in a rough car, forget about good car. Imagine some road in a third world country, and you're riding on that road in a bad car. Okay, and you don't know the exact route how to go. You only have a GPS. Okay, and the GPS internet connection is so bad that you're not able to. There are blips, there are interruptions, and all kinds of things going on. So if you're in a bad road, in a bad car, with a bad internet connection, the chance of you abandoning that journey is very high. Now, if you're on the same bad road with an excellent car, I mean, nicely air conditioned and very nice suspensions and all that. So even if the internet connection is patchy, there are higher chances that you will complete that journey than if you are in a bad road, in a bad car with a poor internet connection. Now, let me give you the analogy here. The road is material life. The car is Varnashrama or no Varnashrama. No Varnashrama is like the rough car. Varnashrama is like the good car. Internet connection is our Krishna consciousness. So, if our Krishna consciousness is very strong, even if you are on a rough road in a rough car, you'll still be impelled to go ahead to a destination. The chances are high. But if you're on a rough road with a rough car and you don't have a proper internet connection, then you're quite very likely to abandon the journey. So let's assume the situation you are not very well connected with the internet. You have a bad road because you have an excellent car. Even if your connection is patchy, the chances that you will continue with your journey are high. Like that. So Varnashrama is like giving you a good car. That's all. On a bad road. you have to anyway, the connection with the internet connection is not dependent on, I mean, that's dependent on you actually. If you're properly fixed in Krishna consciousness, then you have a good connection with Krishna. So even if you don't have the good connection, if you are situated in a good car, the likelihood of you abandoning your journey on a rough road is less than the likelihood of you abandoning your journey when you are in a bad car. So that good car or bad car is like varnashram.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful analogy. Can I extend that analogy for this argument?
Sure.
Surely it is the proclivity of the driver that will ultimately decide whether you stay the course of the journey or not, regardless of the vehicle. And as we've seen through history, many of Prabhupada's closest and most intimate personal servants eventually fell from that vehicle, regardless of the vehicle being a good vehicle for the journey. So I'm trying to.
No. Okay, let me just put it like that. Just before you continue, it's because Prabhupada himself diagnosed the problem as they're not situated in the right ashram. That's the reason he said they're falling down, right? That's why he wanted to introduce that varnashrama. When sannyasis started falling, he started saying this. I mean, I can send you a document where I can post it on the group, where you can see the historical development of varnashrama in Prabhupada's, how Prabhupada began to introduce the concept of varnashrama. How initially he said it's not needed. Later on, he wanted to introduce it, and he gives reasons also why he's introducing it. The reason is fall down of devotees, especially sannyasis. So it's not that they were in a good situation and fell down. You can fall down even from a good situation if you commit offenses or by inattention. That can happen to anyone. By inattention, you can go and crash your car somewhere or whatever. If you commit offenses, that's universally true for everybody. But apart from that, if you are situated in a wrong situation materially, I mean, you're wrong ashrama, then you can still fall down also. Because it gets overwhelming. That's all. You need not fall down, but it gets overwhelming.
So my question originally was trying to get at why do you think that he didn't concentrate on Bhagavad Dharam promotion and building a platform of Bhagavad Dharam as opposed to building a platform of Varnashram? I understand the analogy you're talking about the car, but surely the Bhagavad Dharam path or car must have been a more sound, ultimately a much more sound one than even Varnashram Dharma.
No, like for example, that has got nothing. Varnashrama Dharma is material, no? Whereas Bhagavad Dharma is completely spiritual. So in fact, if I'll send you the document, you can see Prabhupada's original idea was, even when he got marriages done, he simply said, okay, this person can get married to this person and just that's all. Krishna conscious, purely Bhagavad Dharma. But he thought marriages were failing. Then he said, okay, I'm not going to get involved in this anymore because they were not acting on the Bhagavad platform. If you act on the Bhagavad platform, how can the marriage fail? So it is a question of the living entities, how strongly they are connected with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Then it doesn't matter. That's why I said if you have a very good internet connection, it doesn't matter whatever car you are. You may end up finishing your journey. But if you don't have a good car and your internet connection also is bad, then it's problem. So he initially focused only on the relationship of the jiva with Krishna. If that is strong enough, everything else can be managed. But he realized that is not strong enough. Therefore, he introduced the concept of varnashram, because the intensity of Krishna consciousness are not sufficiently high to sustain them. If the intensity of Krishna consciousness is not sufficiently high enough to sustain someone, then naturally you need something which can make your journey through life smoother.
Thank you, Prabhu. If I can just have a slightly separate follow-up question as well. Not follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
We read here Prabhupada's description that sannyasis should not be managing temples and should be, sort of roaming the world preaching as their primary obligation. We see in the movement that many sannyasis have taken to becoming sort of building temples and becoming creating headquarters effectively. How do we understand that discrepancy between Srila Prabhupada's instructions compared to what we see in ISKCON today?
There are two phases of the GBC formation. In phase one, Prabhupada had only Grihasthas as the GBCs. But when they did things in a manner that Prabhupada is felt overly controlling, so then he disbanded the GBC. Then in the second version of GBC that they established, Prabhupada only put sannyasis also as GBCs. So he changed his vision a little later on, that GBCs could also be sannyasis. And he gave a definition of the GBCs. They're like Siksha Gurus. I mean, in the sense that they should instruct others. He didn't change their role though, but he said that the GBC role is mainly supervisory, to ensure that the management is going on properly, to some kind of a quality control, rather than an executive function. Whereas the GBC temple presence is supposed to carry out the executive function. So there are two versions of GBCs he formed during his presence. The first version he disbanded, which only considered the Grihasthas, because he said they were overly trying to control. And then the next version of the GBC he formed, he had sannyasis also in that. So this is a phase where this is the phase one. Then later on, the phase two was introduced after disbanding the phase one GBCs.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Anyone else? Today, I think we have stretched beyond our time. Of course, we started late also. There's also another place where you see that Prabhupada actually is initially glorifying Kausalya Mata and Srimati Mataji. Later on, he says what to do, you're a woman, and things like that. These kind of statements in today's world is considered sexist, discriminatory, and all these kind of things. But Prabhupada is someone coming from the Vedic era, who in the Vedic era, they recognize that some people are more suited, just like Varnashrama. Some people are more suited to do something, others are less suited to do it. But that does not mean they're prohibited from doing it. There's something called more suited, less suited, and prohibiting. But Prabhupada, if you notice, Prabhupada simultaneously very appreciative also, that if someone could perform some service in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Prabhuji, we can see that one, that Prabhupada has given so much of responsibilities or whatever. He has given almost equal opportunities to women or Matajis, whereas now those opportunities are very less for women. I feel, I don't know really, I feel that for women now the opportunities are a little bit lesser as compared to before, Prabhu.
Well, I would say that in fact, opportunities have become much more now, right? You can take a Zoom class and you can have hundreds of men attending your class, right? You have examples in India also. Mother Nitai Sevani, she's got thousands and perhaps tens and thousands of followers.
Yeah, but I have seen, Prabhu, even in Mayapur, because Fridays there will be the class by Matajis. On other days there will be more audience to hear classes, whereas when it comes Friday, there will be very few people coming to the class. That
I think you're confusing two different things. Yeah. Opportunity is different from whether people are accepting it or not accepting. So when you speak of opportunity, opportunities are there, definitely. But whether people are accepting it or not because of their bias, it's their problem, right? How does it matter? Those who are not biased, those who have intelligence from Prabhupada's books, they'll accept Prabhupada's teachings. They're two separate things. Do the opportunities exist? Yes.
I think now
especially in the internet age, of course, in India, in Mayapur and Vrindavan or Bombay, women don't worship on the altar. Although they did do it during, at least Bombay, I think they did during Prabhupada's time. Some things are different, but but the women do have an opportunity to sew dresses for the deity. In Mayapur, all these things happen, garlands and all those things.
That is what especially like those things are given to like Matajis or anything, but I don't know in managerial means I don't know, in management or some this one and all, like what I have experienced or I have seen. So that is not there. Even they are capable or I'm not saying to the extent of very high level or anything, but to give the opinions or to give any this one, they are not at all considered as such, which I have
Uh,
experienced.
See, the way I look at life is that all of us experience discrimination. We experience different types of uh, uh, undesirable situations in different ways. It's only a question of degree. All of us experience it, you know. So the question is, um, I mean, how I look at my life is that if somebody stops me from chanting Hare Krishna, somebody stops me from distributing books or preaching, then or serving Vaishnavas, Namaruchi, Diva, Jiva Doya, and Vaishnava Seva. These are the three. This is the essential. These are three essential elements of. I mean, this is the essence of all Krishna consciousness. Namaruchi, Jiva Doya, and Vaishnava Seva. Okay. If this is stopped, then there's a problem. So as far as I'm concerned, okay, doesn't matter. I mean, as long as I can distribute books, as long as I can preach, and as long as I can serve Vaishnavas, how does it matter? With the particular kind of service, whether I get it or not, doesn't matter. I'll do some other service to the Vaishnavas. I can do some other form of Jiva. I mean, whatever. It cannot, as long as the Vaishnava Seva is nil opportunity, or Jiva Daya nil opportunity, and to chant also is becoming difficult. You're not allowed to, or for whatever reason. I mean, these are extremes. I don't know what it even means. But what I'm saying is, in my life, I don't have any preferences. That's how I lead my life. I don't have any preference. I don't have any desires. I want to do this or that or this. As long as Krishna is merciful to provide me an opportunity of Vaishnava Seva, I'm happy to do it. Any Vaishnava Seva. And or similarly, Jiva Daya, any opportunity to preach, I'm happy to do it. So as long as I can chant the holy names, I'm free to preach. I mean, I'm just happy to do it. So if we just keep with that mentality, I've seen that unlimited opportunities come. I don't plan
I'm not
anything.
complaining as such that I'm not getting or means it has been this one, but I'm saying in a general way because what I have experienced that I'm telling because it might be happening in every place like that. That's the only this one because I don't know. I don't have desire like I have to do or anything. So you're not that. I'm not
Yeah,
complaining that
that's
I
what I'm
am
saying.
not
That's what I'm
getting
saying.
or anything, but
Yeah.
observation I'm saying. That's all.
Correct. Your observation is correct. And all that I'm saying is that I'm not saying your observation is wrong. Your observation is correct. But that I'm just saying that is not just limited to you. All of us in different forms to different degrees, we go through it. But when we have no power to do anything about it, what we cannot cure, we have to endure. That's it. But as long as our engagement in Krishna consciousness is not blocked.
Yes.
So in that, I mean, in the sense that there are unlimited ways to preach, unlimited ways to serve Vaishnavas, all these things are there. But if all that becomes zero, then we are living in some tyranny. No. But as long as it's not zero, I don't keep preferences. I want to do this or that. Okay.
Yes.
As long as I will do some Vaishnava Seva, fine, let me do it.
Yes.
And I mean, Krishna will actually provide. The holy name cannot be contained, you know. So everything begins with the holy name. If we chant the holy names with attentiveness, and with a form of helplessness, as Prabhupada said, genuine cry for Krishna, the holy name cannot be contained. So naturally, the opportunities for Jiva Daya and Vaishnava Seva will also expand unlimitedly. Everything begins with trying to what nobody can restrict us. Is that impossible? Is that if you nobody can stop you from chanting attentively, right?
Yes.
So that can be done by anybody, anywhere, in any circumstance. So if
Even
we can just do that,
Seva, yes. Even seva or seva to the Lord to ours, so that I have seen, Prabhu, that I've experienced also. Those things are true. Yes. This is only the observation I wanted to just know.
yeah,
Like,
I'm saying
because
your observation is correct. I'm just saying your observation is correct. But my
because
experience has
Prabhupada
taught me
has
this
given,
one.
yes,
My
Prabhupada
experience in
has,
this, yeah, go ahead.
Prabhupada has given so much of opportunities to Matajis, and that is what little bit I am feeling. That's all. It's only a feeling I can say. It's not
Correct.
that, yeah.
Correct. My point, I agree. I'm not saying that you're complaining. All that I'm saying is that all of us have different observations. Not, I mean, Some of us have same observations as you about any particular thing. Similarly, all of us have our individual experiences, so many circumstances, we find so many imperfections, right? That's natural. That may not be in line. Not natural means that's natural for us to see those imperfections. Otherwise, we are some cult followers. I mean, we have to know, discriminate what is right, what is wrong. So we may be able to see things which are not right, which are wrong. But what can we do about it? If we can do something about it, okay, let us do it. I mean, if we have the power or authority, or I mean, we can only try, but then trying is one thing, and going on with our life in Krishna consciousness is another thing. That's all. See, trying and its result alone is not Krishna, not our life in Krishna consciousness. That is one part. The other part is we go on with our life. Ahai tuki apratihata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. We practice that kind of bhakti. So on the one hand, we try, that is a separate track. Other hand, we maintain this practice of bhakti, which is ahai tuki apratihata. We try the other thing because Prabhupada wanted ISKCON, Prabhupada wanted a family of devotees to be of a certain type. So whatever we can to ensure that it comes to that, this thing we try. And one way of doing it is also by being good examples.
That's true, Prabhu. That's true. This gives more encouragement to me to go on in this my devotional this one, Prabhu. Thank you very much for this. Even though, because in the beginning I used to feel when I observe all these things, I get really affected. I used to have so much of problem with others, how they are treating or what they are doing. But after these things and all, really I have mellowed down because I am concentrating on this one sadhana and this one more than other complaints or other like these treatments or whatever it is. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Prabhupada always says, no, the result is not enough. That we can try. That's separate track, but that should not mix with your practice of Krishna consciousness. Our practice of Krishna consciousness should be ahai tuki apratihata. Cannot be interrupted. So Prabhupada gives an example.
I'm trying to do that one.
Prabhupada gives a very nice example actually. He says, suppose you're traveling in a boat or a ship, whatever. The person sitting next to you may be third class or fourth class or fifth class. He says that. So what have you got to do with the third class or fourth class or fifth class person? Your business is sit tightly in the boat and cross the ocean. He says that. So like that, whatever, it's our duty also at the same time to try to improve the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in the ways that we could. So we could try to bring up things to the relevant authorities or try to improve things within a certain capacity. But beyond that, we can't do anything. The result is not in our hands. So we have to continue to focus on our practice of bhakti in an uninterrupted and unmotivated manner. And that itself is a solution, because Prabhupada says we need ideal people, right? So if we are ideal, that it will also affect other people and they'll also try to become ideal.
Yes. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll stop here for today. We'll resume again next Sunday. Thank you all very much. So Prabhupada ki jai, vanchakalpatarubhyascha, kripasindhuvescha, paritanam bhavadibhyo.